So this is one of those times where I wanted to pull everybody together to begin to ground for us, you know, from our culture, some of the things that you've been introduced to. What I really want to talk about is essentially what I've gleaned from, geez, I don't know, since 1994 when I began to work with Don Americo, and the things that I have found to be really significant as far as a way of living. And you know, we're introduced to rituals and so forth, but there's also the everyday aspect of the central themes of importance, I think, in the ways of the Andes. And for me, there are three things essentially, and the first one has to do with intent. And the second one has to do with the connection. And the third one has to do with the Aini, which is the sacred sense of reciprocity that happens here in the Andes. And for me, it's like the intent comes first. Because if you don't really get that, if you're not living through that, then you don't have the other things as you might. You don't have that level of connection. You don't have the understanding of the Aini and so on. And there are many layers of understanding to these things. I think we began to hear these things at kind of a surface level, you know, and also don't really understand what they mean. And then the more and more that you stay with the teachings and you begin to live through them in whatever way that you know to, then these other things begin to really sink in. Intent always seemed to be the most important thing to me. That was the primary element in this work. And for years, and I've got to tell you for years, and I've heard this from some of you, it's like, I don't really understand all that, you know, what does that mean? And essentially, I was in the same place. You know, I wrestled around with this thing, and I was trying to teach it, you know, way back when. And in order to teach something, you've got to be it. You know, you've got to understand it, and so on. And finally, one day, I recognized that what I was trying to do was to understand it with my mind. And intent has nothing to do with the mind. Absolutely nothing. And so then the challenge for me was to, okay, how do I begin to talk about it in such a way? Because when you're trying to expose people to these kind of elements, words just don't work. You know, they just don't. Essentially, intent has to do with energy. Everything has to do with energy. And yet, to begin to lead people to that point of understanding in a bodily felt way, how do you do that? So what I began to look at is kind of a comparison about what it is and what it is not. And that's what I want to introduce you all to. So there are two distinctions. And one is intent and the other one is intention. And the thing that's very interesting to me is that there's an incredible difference. And when you hear about intention, it typically comes out of the Western culture, right? You hear people talking about intention. Well, you know, what is it in our Western culture? But it's more about the mind, so that makes a lot of sense. But what I finally came to was a way to make a distinction is very simple. And that is, intent is, and intention tries. And if you take it from those two distinctions, then it kind of, you know, there are a lot of other things that fall out from that. So if intent is, that's just something that is, and that's something that we carry with us always. It's something that we may have forgotten about. It's something we're born with. It's that salka energy from the left side, as they talk about in the Andes, the mystery and so on. And that resides in every single one of us, and it never leaves us, ever. But what does happen is that, you know, as life happens and, you know, we grow through our years and so forth, then that intent kind of gets kind of an incrustation. You know, it's like an incrustation around the heart because things happen, you know. And we take things into our mind and we make certain things of them and we develop our beliefs that way and you know, and we have beliefs that serve us and then we have those that don't. We have those that hold us back, you know. And at that point, that's where the intention takes over. That's where the trying happens. So if at any point in time, and I know I've certainly experienced it, and probably everyone has, if you feel as though you're bumping up against a brick wall, you can't quite, you're trying to get somewhere, you know? There's something that you want in your life, and it's like you're bumping up against this membrane, you know? And sometimes you get almost to the breaking point of through the membrane, but you don't quite get there, or you get thrown back, because it has to do with what holds us back. When you try to do something, it doesn't happen, does it? And, you know, it's like, try to pick up that leaf there, you know. Either you do it or you don't. So intent is, and intention tries. Now there's a cascading, as I said, that happens from that. If you have intention, then typically what we try to do is to control everything. And we have expectations. Expectations, an expectation is a tiny little box that says it has to look like, sound like, feel like this. And if I don't get that's in the midst of this tiny little box, then I set myself up for disappointment, don't I? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the other hand, if intent just is, and its connection to all that is, and you hold that energy inside, then just like with intention, which has to do with limitation, whatever you hold inside, it's like a call to the universe. You know. With intent, you release expectancy. I want you to pay attention to the difference in the language, because there's a feeling state to each of them. If you have expectancy, that's one thing. It's like a flow goes out. If you have expectation, then that kind of closes things off, doesn't it? You see. So if the intent is held in such a way and is so strong that that message just goes out, exactly what you need will come to you. You know, you don't necessarily need to think that what comes to you is always going to be a happy thing, because sometimes, you know, I mean, it's about a learning, because what has to happen is that the intention needs to be dispensed with. It needs to be released. And the first step to transformation and to change is awareness that it's even there. So a lot of times, you know, these things we're hit in the face with these kind of things. So first of all, we can be aware of them. Then we can make a decision. You can make a decision that will bring you to a threshold, and if you choose to step through that threshold, then you step through to intent. You see. And I think everybody has this journey. You know, to me, it's the underpinning of the entire spiritual path, is coming back to that place where we all started, which is that core element that we are.